So most beginners are told to pick one lane, either data analyst, data scientist, or data engineer, and go deep. Honestly, I believe that is the wrong approach. There's a fourth option that beginners rarely hear about, and it's an analytics engineer. And while spending 4 years in data analytics, I see this as the most valuable role currently in today's market within data. So the core idea behind an analytics engineer is, instead of owning one slice of this data pipeline pie, you essentially own everything from messy data to basically presenting it to stakeholders. So in this video, I'm gonna go over what is an analytics engineer, what are the skills needed in order to become an analytics engineer, the projects that you can start building, and also why the market is craving these roles. All right, so if you're new, my name is Zazo. I've been in data analytics for 4 years now, and I'm currently a senior data analyst. However, I may add, I started as a junior, and I very much spent the prior 4 years before data analytics in software engineering. And I've taken those skills into my current role, and my day-to-day looks more like a analytics engineer than it does a data analyst. So with that being said, I feel I have enough knowledge here to be able to tell you what a day-to-day looks like in an analytics engineer's role and all the different things that they touch. So let's get into it. So first, I'm gonna have to explain what is an analytics engineer. So if you think about the whole data pipeline, all the way from getting the messy data all the way to presenting it to stakeholders or a dashboard or whatever it may be. You have the data engineer, who is basically like the highway that moves the data to where it needs to be for analysis. And then you have the data analyst, who takes this cleaner data, does a couple things to it, and presents it to the stakeholders. Well, the analytics engineer would stand in the middle and kind of be able to play on both sides of this pipeline, taking the messy data all the way to the source of truth, data visualization tool, and clean data. So here's something that is a classic symptom of if a company is missing an analytics engineer. Basically, the company has 2 dashboards with the same metrics, however, the numbers look completely different. This is the role of the analytics engineer that would step in the middle between engineering and a data analyst, be able to create one source of truth for these numbers, and that is a key role behind the analytics engineering job. So the simplest way to think of this is data engineers move data, analytics engineer models and validates data, and then the data analyst consumes the data. So next I'm gonna go into why I believe the analytics engineering role is the smarter path for most beginners. The main thing I'll say here is you're able to understand the full system of how data gets from the raw source all the way to presenting it, consuming it, and being able to create visualizations or being able to speak in meetings on it. It is the best thing to aim for to get a whole look of what data analytics as a whole looks like. From being in something siloed as a data engineer or data science, not that you wouldn't know all of the different pieces of it, but you probably won't get to experience them. A data engineer is very much behind the scenes, works with production level code, and does a lot of the infrastructure. So they might not really come in contact with the business stakeholders. And where a data scientist is very much in the statistics world, kind of researching on what can come in the future, sometimes they don't get a full picture of either what it's like presenting these findings in a very business way instead of a techie way, or a statistics way, I should say. Or on the other hand, they're not building out production pipelines or any of these types of things, having to think of optimization and those types of things that data engineer would have to. The next reason I believe this is the way to go for beginners is it creates a better business fluency as well as technical depth. So you're able to not only be able to explain things to stakeholders, but you're also able to really explain and understand the technical parts of how data is basically made and modeled for you to present to stakeholders. And honestly, I've spoke to many beginners and coached many beginners, and what they fail to actually understand or know is not SQL in a nutshell or like in a vacuum. They can write a SQL query, they can kind of tell you what the SQL query does, but what's often missing is they don't understand where a metric comes from or why it's defined a certain way. But owning the raw data to the final number, you're able to speak to every single thing, why this number is the source of truth, because you've seen it from the beginning to the end, and you know the source of the data because you sit on both sides of this entire data pipeline. So the next reason why I think this is the way to go is your portfolio becomes so much better if you aim towards building as an analytics engineer. So if you just build a dashboard, it simply says that you can take something that's already clean. I always mention these Kaggle data sets, and you can put it into a pretty visualization. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can solve a problem. Can you put it into something that looks very nice and that maybe have some numbers and explain what those numbers are generally? Sure, but it doesn't speak to your technical depth as well. But if you put something like you built a production ready pipeline from raw data to a business ready model, that is completely different. Seeing that from end to end is a lot better than I just built a dashboard. So now I'll get into the core skills of what's needed in order to be an analytics engineer. So the first thing is going to be SQL, of course, and it will need to be more than just the basics. It will need to be advanced. So you'll need to know subqueries, CTEs, window functions, being able to optimize queries and perform these actions on large data sets. I'm talking about millions and billions of rows. So not only will you need to, the normal select, you'll need to be very careful in how you do these different data manipulations because you'll normally be working with large amounts of data. The next thing is DBT. This is kind of the standard for transformations and things like that. Then you'll need to know a data warehouse. So something like BigQuery or Snowflake, whatever is on the job postings or companies that you want to work for. You'll need to know Git and version control, how to back up changes, how to push stuff to a branch, things like that. Some basic orchestration tools like Airflow or built-in scheduling, pipelines or jobs of some sort. And the last but definitely not least, you'll be able to use your business communication. So speaking with stakeholders, defining different things, being in meetings to kind of set this thing out and see it from end to end. So now I'm going to give you a couple of different project ideas that you could use in order to put on your portfolio and start learning end to end and get your start in becoming a analytics engineer. So the first thing you want to do is make a full end to end pipeline. And when I mean pipeline, I don't mean just moving data and putting it somewhere. Move the data, the raw data, whether that be through API, a warehouse, whatever it may be, move it, clean it, transform it to what you need, and then go ahead and make some type of visualization as well and be able to present that and do kind of like a case study as well. So that way you can show that you've taken everything from point A to point Z basically. So what you want to do is pull raw data from APIs, public data sets, warehouses, and then you're going to want to add tests in order to model and validate that the data that's coming in makes sense and is correct. And then, like I said, you want to take how you took the raw messy data and make it into a complete story that is told to a business stakeholder. So for this project, this is what I would recommend someone build. And then when you build it, I would recommend pushing it to GitHub, write a clear README, and maybe even consider including a short loom to explain or walk through what you did. So that way, if anybody looks at it, any employer, you can point them to that direction, they can see exactly what you did, and they also get a version of you explaining it to see where your communication skills lie as well. I think this is great for an overall end-to-end being able to show your actual skills and talent. So the next thing is I'm going to show you why this is so in demand right now in the market. So in 2026, the median base salary for an analytics engineer sits somewhere around $158,000 a year. Obviously, this depends on location and company size, but this is one of those roles that AI just hasn't been able to replace. In fact, companies look for this role now that AI is becoming more ingrained into companies. They're looking for analytics engineers that can see the full pipeline all the way through instead of just these sectioned off little parts of it, right? So instead of having a data engineer and then a data analyst, maybe depending on the company, they just have 1 or 2 analytics engineers that can do both and be able to become very productive, especially with things like AI tools and these types of things that these analytics engineers can use in order to be more productive and more efficient in their day-to-day. Companies need clean data to be able to feed to these AI models, and this is where an analytics engineer shines, because this is a lot of what the day-to-day will be doing. They build infrastructure behind things like feature stores, they build in model monitoring and AI data pipelines. So I think this is a great starting point for people getting into data analytics in general. If you can kind of work toward this is how I see it. If you can work toward becoming an analytics engineer, the worst case scenario is you become a data analyst. And is that really so bad? Best case scenario, you actually become an analytics engineer or even a data engineer. But aiming for this route, you kind of don't silo yourself into just being able to create a dashboard. You're able to see data from end to end. Even if you are a data analyst, you have way more knowledge in knowing how the overall pipeline is built, defined, and how things should be when you're presenting your findings. So that's going to be the end of the video. So if you don't know or you haven't started on where you want to be in data analytics, analytics engineering is the way. So if you aim for that, like I said, the worst case scenario is you become a data analyst, and that ain't too bad at the end of the day. Love, peace, and chicken grease.